Saturday, Larry Krueger with you. Happy July the 23rd, the final weekend before Thanksgiving. A huge, huge weekend for the 49ers as they go limping into Lambeau Field. And normally I would be like, wow, they got no shot. They got no shot. Oh, my goodness. There's no, no Trent. Well, we don't know about Trent Williams. He may go, he may not go. It'll be a game time decision. But no Nick Bosa. No Brock Purdy. And obviously, you're out. Brandon Ayuk's out for the year. Javon Hargrave out for the year. Mooney Ward will not be there. So the Niners are down their number one corner. They're down their number one pass rusher. They could be down their star left tackle. They're down their starting quarterback. They're starting a backup quarterback on the road against a Packers team that is rolling and playing pretty good football. Pretty good football. Probably one of the best teams in the NFL, to be honest. And it looks dire. Things look dire. And maybe they are. And maybe quite possibly they are. We got a great hour for you, though. But I'm gonna tell you, I don't want to say don't panic, because if you want to panic, go panic. I'm not going to tell you not to panic. But I will say this. I was in Texas Stadium in this week of the 1995 season. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was visiting my buddy Pete. I was doing a little road trip, rolling through the South, and I saw that the Niners were playing the Cowboys. I'm like, you know what? Pete was living in Dallas. I'm like, buddy, I'm going to roll through Dallas. We're going to get together and hang out for the weekend and go to the Cowboy-Niner game. So sure enough, we scalped the tickets. I'm probably not appropriate way to say it, but we got the tickets from the scalpers. And we sat there. We probably paid $500. I mean, this was you got to remember, 1995, the Niners were the defending Super Bowl champion. The Cowboys were the Super Bowl favorite. And the Niners and the Cowboys were like the biggest show in the NFL times 100 at that point in time. But the Niners rolled in there. Steve Young was hurt. They had to go with their backup, Elvis Grbac. And that day was one of the greatest 49er days of all time, because they went to Texas Stadium. Grbac hit Rice on a slant and he was gone. I mean, the anthem wasn't even over. I mean, people weren't even sitting down yet, and Jerry was in the end zone. And then I think Ricky Jackson got a big hit on Aikman, and he put one out in the flat, and I'm pretty sure Mert might have picked it off and chicken danced down the sideline, and now it's 14-0. And then it's like at the end of the first half, and Grbac dumps it off in to a little middle screen to Derek LaVille. He goes high-stepping into the end zone. It's 31-7 at halftime. And I remember I had my Niner hat and T-shirt on. I was with my buddy who's a big Cowboy fan, and I just turned around to the section. I'm like, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Goodbye. Start waving to everybody. People are throwing peanuts at me. Sit down. Get that Niner fan out of here. Now, I wouldn't have done it at the LA Coliseum with Raider fans, because they would have killed me. And there's probably a few fan bases, most notably the Niner fan base right now. I don't know that I would do it if I was a road visiting fan coming to Levi's. But Texas Stadium at that point in time, I mean, it was a very nice environment. I mean, they're playing Donna Summer, disco music, and people are dancing, and there was not a hint of violence in the crowd in Arlington that day. It was a good. The Cowboy crowd was definitely a good crowd, and they took it all in good fun. Nobody tried to attack me or anything. But I'm like, yep, thanks for coming. I'm like, the champs are in town. New World Order, not today. Oh, I mean, every taunt I could think of, I delivered to Cowboy fans that day. So I guess it's my long-winded way of saying they got a shot. They got a shot. I don't know if I wish I'd bet the pack 3 days ago at -1 or whatever, because I think it's now the spread's moved up quite a bit now that people know that Brock Purdy is not going to be playing. But they got a shot. Do they have a great shot? No, but they have a shot. A lot of people want to see in 808 KNBR. Is Shanahan making a mistake going with Brandon Allen? Personally, I'd love to see him go with the kid. I'd love to see him go with Tanner Mordecai, but that's not going to happen. They're not going to go with a youngster in this situation. But I like Mordecai more than I like Allen and more than I like DUBS, to be completely honest. But, and someday if Tanner Mordecai ever becomes good, everybody will claim that they knew he was great, but he didn't get this start over Brandon Allen. So that'll be kind of comical in retrospect at some point. But Brandon Allen outplayed Josh Dobbs in the preseason, or in camp, I should say. I think Dobbs might have outplayed Allen a little bit if you just looked at the preseason games. I looked at my notes from this summer, and I had Allen as better than Dobbs in the practices, and Dobbs is slightly better than Allen in the preseason games. But it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that Shanahan's going with Allen. Shanahan likes Allen. He thinks he runs his offense well. I thought Allen looked really, really sharp all summer. I mean, he really did. And, I asked him about it. How much more comfortable are you in this offense right now than you were a year ago? And he's like, it's night and day. And you can kind of see it. You can see it in his movements on the practice field. He had a very good week of practice. And we'll see if he can go to Lambeau and get it done. Now, what is the game plan going to be on offense? I think the game plan's got to be a lot of running. If you looked at the Packers' last game at Soldier Field last weekend against the Bears offense is terrible, and yet the Bears ran for 5-6 a carry in that game. They ran it and ran it and ran it some more. It was like 33 runs, 34 runs, something like that, and they ran for over 5 yards a carry. So that's the game plan. Dominate the time of possession. The Niners are already the number one time of possession team in pro football. But even that's probably not going to be enough. They need to really dominate time of possession and really play complementary football and run the heck out of it. And the Niners running backs between Mason, McCaffrey, Garendo, they're better running backs than what Chicago has. The Niner line is probably a better run blocking line than what Chicago offers. So run the ball. Run the ball, dominate the time of possession, protect your defensive line that's not going to have Bosa, that's going to, that's overused Floyd, that's not going to have Mooney. Protect your defense and run the heck out of the football. I think that's got to be the game plan. Run it, and run it some more. 65-35 run. 35 to 45 runs is what it's going to take. The Niners are also going to have to be +1 or +2 on the turnover margin at the end of the day. You're not going to win this game if you go in there and you commit a bunch of turnovers. You're going to be cooked. You go in there and you're -2 in turnovers, you're going to lose 38-6. I mean, you're going to get your doors blown off. You have to steal a couple possessions. They have to win the turnover battle. Okay, that's one. They can't have these colossal screw-ups on special teams that they've had virtually every single game. Can't happen in this game. Got to play clean on special teams, got to win the turnover battle, got to run the hell out of the football. Those are the three things that are absolute musts. Now, the other thing in this game that is going to be really interesting is no Nick Bosa. And the Niners' defensive plan, their defensive strategy, their defensive everything is all tied to Bosa. It's all tied to Bosa. And without Bosa, you saw what it looked like. Last week against Seattle, 3.1 yards a play, or 3 yards a play, I believe, is what the Niner defense gave up when Bosa was out there. As soon as he went out third quarter, that number jumped from 3 yards a play to 6.1 yards a play. So, I mean, has Nick been spectacular this year? No, he hasn't. In fact, Bosa in the fourth quarter of the Niners' 5 losses this year has 0 sacks, as in 0, as in no sacks, none. The 49ers as a team only have 4 sacks in their 5 losses in the fourth quarter. So as a team, they're not getting it done. But Bosa, Mr. Defensive Player of the Year, Mr. $32 million a year, 0 sacks in 5 losses. So the Niners, as I said, have 4 in their losses. 2 against Minnesota, 1 against the Rams, none against the Cardinals, none against the Chiefs. One, I think Leonard Floyd had one against Seattle. So they have a total of 4 sacks in 5 losses. And now Nick Sorensen's going to have to do something that he hasn't had to do at all, hardly this year. The Niners are one of the lowest blitz rate teams in pro football. They blitz like 13% of the time. So now Sorensen, without Bosa, is going to have to dial up a bunch of exotic blitzes, corners and safeties and linebackers. He's going to have to send the house. And it's going to have to, and there have been people who watch film who are regularly critical of the Niners blitz packages as being pretty simplistic and not all that well conceived. So now this puts a lot of pressure on a first-year defensive coordinator to go affect Jordan Love somehow, some way. And if they can't do it, they're going to get their doors blown off. I mean, it's going to be a long, long day at the office. So a lot of key elements of this game for sure. I'm looking at some of the numbers between the Niners and the Packers. Both teams have scored 250 points. They have the same number of points on the year. Niners defense has given up 9 more points than Green Bay's defense. Niners have actually gained 108 more yards than Green Bay has on offense. All these people are like, Shanahan this, Shanahan. He hasn't had the reigning offensive player of the year almost the entire year. Ayuk's done for the year. And the line is not spectacular. And they're still gaining more yards than Green Bay. 108 more yards than Green Bay. And Green Bay's got a bevy of good weapons. So the one thing in this game that is going to be a huge challenge, and Brandon Allen talked about it yesterday when I asked him about it. I said, what is the challenge? He's like, we got to take care of the ball. Got to take care of the football. Green Bay's defense has forced 3 more turnovers than the Niners defense. So both these teams have played a lot of one-possession games. The only difference is Green Bay has won these games, and the Niners have lost them. Green Bay's 5-2 in one-possession games. Niners are 2-4. But Green Bay's defense has been much improved this year, and they've forced 19 takeaways. That is a ton. 3rd most in the NFL. So they take the ball away. Their defense has forced 3 turnovers in a game 5 different times this year. So they've got 19 takeaways, 15 of them coming in 5 games. And yet offensively, Green Bay can score. They've scored 24 points or more 7 times this year, 4th most in the NFL. They haven't been all that good in the red zone. A lot of penalties in the red zone. They don't run it well in the red zone. Imagine if they did, they would be even better than they are right now as far as points per game. They're really good at protecting Jordan Love. So even without Nick Bosa, as I just said, Sorensen's going to have to dial up some pressures. Green Bay's good at protecting their quarterback. He's been sacked the fewest number of times of any quarterback in the league. So Green Bay comes in playing good ball. They barely beat Chicago last week, but they've won 5 out of 6. And, the Niners defense is going to really struggle to get off the field against Jordan Love, you would think. Niners defense has struggled mightily on 3rd downs. He's got a bevy of weapons. Josh Jacobs is their big free agent signing. He's really good. You got to cover him out of the backfield. The 49ers in the last game against Seattle, Fred Warner, who's clearly getting worn down, him and Campbell gave up 9 receptions on 9 targets. Fred has given up 30 receptions. On the last 30 receptions he's given up are the last 30 times he's been targeted. No resistance. Totally wearing out. So you're going to have to cover Jacobs out of the backfield. He can catch it. And then they've got Kraft at tight end. They've got Jaden Reed, really good slot receiver. They go mostly 12 personnel, 2 tight ends when they get a lead. When they get a lead, you're going to see the 2 tight ends. They're going to run the ball. They're going to try to power it through you. When they're trailing, they go a lot of 11 personnel with the 3 wides. And the guy that you really have to cover is Christian Watson. He just had a monster game last week against the Bears. He had 150 yards of receiving. So Christian Watson's big, strong, fast, but they also have Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavion Wicks. I mean, they got guys. Bo Melton. They got great depth Great depth. So, and then, to me, if there's a wild card factor in this game, it's how much can Brandon Allen run? Caleb Williams ran against, when the Pack played man-to-man last week against the Bears. Caleb burned them, man. He ran for 70 yards. As soon as they turned their head on the quarterback, he took off. And I know Brandon's not the runner that Brock is, but he's going to have to take off and run. When the defense plays man and locks him up and turns their head on the quarterback and everybody's covered, Brandon's going to have to run. The big advantage, I think, for the Niners in this game are the two weapons that are really rolling. JJ is having a great year. Juwan Jennings, he's had back-to-back 90-plus yard games. He's just a warrior. He's just an absolute warrior. There's very few guys on the football team that you'd say, there's very few teams that I've ever seen where I'd say, yeah, the toughest guy on the team's a wide receiver. I mean, it's like hardly ever. I mean, maybe never. But on this team, that's the case. Juwan Jennings is in a lot of ways the toughest guy in the room, and he's a wide receiver. I mean, what's the key to Juwan Jennings? That's it right there. In a room of tough guys, he's the toughest guy. I mean, that's it. Is he fast? No, he's not fast. He runs 4.7. Does he jump high? No. Is he quick? Not particularly. The guy doesn't really have it until the game starts. And then you're like, whoa, look at this guy. This guy's making every single play. That play that he made last week on third down, we're never going to talk about it because it came in a loss. We're all going to forget about it by literally next week. They threw it short of the sticks. If you missed this play, they threw it short of the sticks. He's got 3 Seattle defenders draped on him. He's got a 4th Seattle defender just hovering, waiting to hit him. He drags the entire group of guys 4 yards for the first. I mean, that was beastly. I mean, that was awesome. That was one of the plays of the year for Juwan Jennings. When I think of Juwan Jennings from now on, I'll think of that. I mean, that guy is just his desire to win, his toughness, his determination, you're not stopping me with one guy, 2 guys. I mean, he's something else, man. He is something else. So he's playing. That's a good sign. The other guy who's playing is George Kittle, and Kittle's looked good on the practice field this week. Niners have not won this year without Kittle. He's missed 2 games. They've lost both the games that he missed, I should say. So he will be playing, and that's a good sign. So Kittle will be in there. Expect a lot of Kittle. Jennings will be in there. Expect a lot of Jennings. Man, I better see some Mason and Garendo, or I'm going to be spitting fire next week. I mean, come on, you can't just bench Garendo, your game breaker, and Mason, your 3rd leading rusher in the league, because CMC's back. The truth is, the Niners have not run the ball as well the last 2 weeks since CMC's been back as they did before when he was out. So that has been a huge disappointment, and that trend's got to change this weekend. All right, that's a little thumbnail sketch on the game. Let's take a timeout. Next segment, we have a mystery caller. We're going to go mystery caller. I think you guys are going to love this one. We're going to go a little mystery caller coming up next. Let's just say a 49er, not a 49er player, but a 49er figure of the past. That's the only hint. But we'll go mystery caller, and we'll throw some hints out next. And then bottom of the hour, we're going to visit with Steve McGargy he works for the AP in Green Bay, and we'll get his thoughts on the Niners and the Packers and how the Pack's looking coming into this thing. And if we have time, I'll play my interview with Jalen Moore. I caught up with the Niners possibly starting left tackle in the locker room a couple days ago, and we'll let you listen to that conversation before we get out of here. It's 49er Forecast on a Saturday, and our mystery guest is coming up next. Who will it be? Join us on The Sports Leader.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens. Owens made the catch. Darrell Owens was having a rotten day, but on one play here, does he make up for it?
Faithful Larry Krueger's rocking the red and gold as 49ers forecast continues on KNBR, the sports leader.
When I hear this song, it makes me think of Nick Sirianni, because supposedly Sirianni gets fired up listening to that. Welcome back to 49er Forecast on a Saturday as we come to you the day before the Niners take on the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. And a guy who you're going to recognize here in a minute. Well, why don't we go to the lines. We have a mystery caller. Mystery caller, welcome to the Sports Leader. How are you?
I'm doing well, Larry. I'm loving the show. I love the football, the passion, I feel like Steve Young a little bit. When Young would go to a dome stadium, they had to take a cup of dirt for him because he would get dirt on his hands because he hated the AstroTurf. And that's what I feel like when I'm listening to you is, okay, this is just pure football matchups. It's great. I love it.
No messing around. Okay, so we haven't given away your identity yet. So
Right.
Are you a former 49er player?
No.
No, you're not a former 49er player. Are you a former 49er coach?
No.
No. Okay. Are you a former 49er media person?
Yes, indeed I am.
Look at that. Look at that. We're closing in. We're closing in. Are you a man who at one time said that Jared Hayne was the greatest return man of all time?
I don't recall that, no. But
Yes, you are.
I've taken a lot of falls. I've played a lot of basketball. I bumped my head a lot, so I could well have said that.
Are you Kevin Lynch, formerly of the San Francisco Chronicle?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Look at you. Look at you.
Wow.
Lynch.
is
I got to
amazing.
give you a little clap.
I love it. I love it. I hope it's a two-finger golf clap.
It's awesome to hear from you. You covered the 49ers from what year to what year? How many years were you total covering the Niners? Some good years too.
I did. I put exactly 30 years in. I was 88 to 2018, and
I would never have guessed that. I would have said like 15. I would have had probably about half that. Kev probably covered him for 15, 18 years. 30 years.
30 years, and it was glorious. I mean, it was, I was thinking about it last night, and I'm thinking about coming on with you today, and just what we've seen in the Bay Area, the dynasties that we've had, the stories, the moments, this franchise, the 49ers, Eddie DeBartolo, Joe Montana. It's amazing. It's so rich.
Yeah, it's been
gold. It's precious. It's really indescribable. And to be a part of all of that. I do at times. I love being a fan. I watch every game, and I love sitting back on the couch. I've never been a fantasy football guy because I just love the game so much. And the same thing I was describing about you and about the segment you just did. I love that stuff, the matchups, what we're going to see on Sunday with the Packers. I went back and I watched the All-22 just to prepare for this segment. And It was like, wow, all that stuff kind of coming back. It's just so fun, and it's so essential to the Bay Area, to sports, to who I am, to who you are, to what KNBR does. I mean, it's great.
Oh, man, it's awesome to have you with us. Kevin Lynch with us on the Yuma guest line, longtime Niner beat writer and a guy that I've done many segments on the radio with through the years, and I've loved every one of them. Kev, let's just go through a quick hitters here. I'll give you some your favorite person that you came in contact with in your entire time covering the Niners. Who would it be?
Wow. I really love Jerry. Jerry Rice was, he let me work out with him in the off seasons. I knew his personal trainer really well. And I don't know, I just always hit it off with him. And
he's a great dude. I've done many events with Jerry. Jerry's so good around people. He's giving of his time. He loves to the exchanges with the Niner fans. He's fantastic. How about favorite year? How about favorite year, Kev? Do you have a season that you stood out and said, "Man, that was a phenomenal year"?
Well, I mean, the two favorites are 88 and 94. 88 was my first year, and the 49ers were pretty much left for dead at midseason, and then they come all the way back. They finish at 10-6. They have the tremendous Super Bowl with the drive, and Montana bringing them, down the field in the last second, hitting John Taylor. During that drive, of course, Montana sees John Candy, a comedian at the time, in the crowd and loosens everybody up during the drive. And then 94, the guy that stands out so much to me through my experience is Deion Sanders. And during that year, the way he played, unbelievable. It was just remarkable. Going against Andre Rison, who was a wide receiver at the Falcons at the time, and it was a huge week. Rison versus Sanders, and Sanders gets in a fight with him and actually beats the crap out of him in like 3 seconds. And then on the next series, he picks off a pass and goes 90 yards the other way. I mean, I
love how nobody got ejected in that fight. These guys throw like 19 blows at each other. Nobody gets ejected. Those are great days. Right. Kev, we gotta go because we're tough on time here. But man, it just hit me that we gotta talk more ball with you. Where are you in the post game on Sunday? How about would you come on the Krug Show YouTube post game show after?
Oh, absolutely.
I'd love to have you on and where we have a little bit more time and we could we could tell more stories and peel more thoughts out of you because we're so pressed for time here. But man, it's awesome to hear your voice. Now you're teaching, right? You're teaching college?
Yeah, I'm at San Jose State, and I went back and got a degree, and now I'm teaching in the Justice Studies Department. So I'm teaching some sociology classes, human rights and theory, and all sorts of things like that. So I'm pretty far away from the sporting life day to day, but again, I love it, and it's what I do. I mean, when I come home, I'm taping all these games, and for my relaxation, I'm watching football.
I hear you. You're legit, man. You do your work. You watch. Your enthusiasm was not contrived. Some people, you hear their enthusiasm, you're like, are they really this fired up? But your enthusiasm was always genuine, and I think that's why the readers and the listeners on KNBR who heard you so many times through the years enjoyed your segments. Kev, we'll let you go, but hey, okay. I'll text you after the show, and would love to have you on the post game tomorrow. I do a post game kind of about an hour or so after the game's over. After I finish my KNBR post game hit, I go live on YouTube, and I've got a kind of an ensemble group. My son's part of it now. But we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you on post game Sunday if you have a few minutes. If not, we could do a different day. But if so, we'd love to have you in the post game. So
hey, that'd be great. Love to talk some ball.
Kev, good to talk to you, man. Have a great day.
All right. Okay. All right, Larry. Take care.
Yeah, Kevin Lynch. He covered the Niners for the Chronicle for a lot of years. Great dude. And join us tomorrow after the Niner KNBR post game. I'll do a little live stream. after that, and we'll talk Niners and Packers and hopefully talk about the win. All right, we're going to talk more about the matchup, though, coming up next with Steve McGargy from the AP in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He's next on the Sports Leader.
Yeah, today, really. I know he had a plan for his shoulder all week. He was going to rest it a little bit on Wednesday, and I think we kind of split reps there on Wednesday. He's going to rest it a little bit, and then I think the plan was Thursday to come out and practice, and I guess just in warm-ups just wasn't feeling right, and so still expect him to kind of go in, get treatment, come back, but yeah, I kind of found out today.
Larry Krueger's rocking the red and gold as 49ers forecast continues on KNBR, the sports leader.
Raph cracking me up with the Rocky IV soundtrack. Yous guys could change, and we's could change, and together we can change. Welcome back. 49er forecast on a Saturday. Niners and Packers go tomorrow on the leader from Lambeau. Greg Papa and Tim Ryan will be on the call. Chris Babcock doing stats between them. Mike Holler producing from Lambeau, where the snow has fallen this week. And get ready for a cold one for sure. And with us on the line, on the UMA guest line to help us break it all down, is Steve McGargy, who writes for the AP in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and covers the Pack, and he's with us on the UMA guest line to break it all down. Steve, thanks for a few minutes today.
My pleasure. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, and I watched the Bears-Packers game last week, and I really, when the Packers rolled in here last year in the playoffs, man, they just had tremendous momentum. And I love some of the young players they have there, Kraft and Reed and just, the quarterback, and, they got some really, really good young players. Gutekunst is a fantastic GM, but this year, man, I mean, this last game against the Bears, man, if they play like that, I think the 49ers probably have a shot to win this game. What happened last week? Why did Green Bay have such a difficult time stopping the Chicago run game?
It was a tough game for their defense. It was not one of their better performances on defense. They switched to a new scheme this year on defense, the new coordinator, Jeff Hafley, and they did a great job of producing takeaways early in the season. They were leading the league in takeaways and in turnover margin earlier this year. They haven't been able to get a takeaway either of their last two games, and they've kind of struggled. I mean, they had the loss to the Lions. Then the Bears game, they probably should have lost. They got the blocked field goal as time expired to win the game. But, yeah, they really struggled to contain Caleb Williams, both passing the ball and running the ball. And they just haven't gotten the big plays on defense that they're really thriving on earlier in the season.
4 number ones on that front line, Lucas Van Ness and Rashawn Gary on the ends, Devontae Wyatt and Kenny Clark inside. All those guys were first-round picks. Who's the best player on their front four? Who's the guy that commands the double?
I mean, it depends. Are you talking about this year or this command? Rashawn Gary is the guy they really want. I mean, he's kind of regarded as their best pass rusher, and he's struggled early this year, but he's come on late. Kenny Clark's a 3-time Pro Bowler, but he's still looking for his first sack of the season. Lucas Van Ness, but the most recent of the first-round picks, he's kind of struggled this year too. In sporadic playing time as a rookie, he made some big plays, but he only has 1 sack so far this year. This switching scheme with the new coordinator has produced a lot more takeaways. The secondaries really kind of thrived on it, but the switch from the 3-4 to the 4-3, it seems a lot of the guys up front have struggled to adjust to it. I know Preston Smith, a veteran pass rusher for the Packers, was struggling. It seemed to be struggling with it, and he got traded to the Steelers at the deadline. He said he'd requested that trade because he wanted a scheme that fit him better with it, which he got in Pittsburgh. And it seems there's maybe a little bit more. A lot of those guys up front might be kind of needing some time to adjust to it.
Yeah, it's interesting, when you switch from, you switch your front from a 34 front to a 43 front. I mean, some guys fit it better than others. Some guys are scheme versatile and can move from scheme to scheme and seamlessly transition. Other guys, really struggle with it and sometimes never make the adjustments and then realize, hey, you know what? I need to be in a scheme that fits my skill set. How about the injury front coming into this thing? Edgerrin Cooper was a phenomenal player at Texas A&M. They drafted him in the second round. And he's played well, but he's hurt in this game. I think he pulled the hammy earlier this week. And then Jair Alexander might be the best corner going, or at least definitely a top 5 corner going. And he's not going in this game. So who steps up with no Cooper and no Alexander?
Yeah, Cooper was having a nice rookie year. He was an NFC Defensive Player of the Week against Jacksonville a few weeks ago. And Alexander's having a great season as well when he's been healthy, but that hasn't been the case the last few weeks. He missed the Lions game. He played the first half against the Bears, then had to sit out the rest of that game, and now he won't be available tomorrow. Carrington Valentine, he was a seventh-round pick a year ago, who played quite a bit as a rookie. He's probably going to step into that. He's probably going to get a lot more playing time at corner now. They're going to need a big game from him with Jair out.
What do you think of Hafley? I know he was here, for a while. I know he was at Ohio State. I mean, and he's kind of thought to be one of the hot young defensive names as far as potential head coaching candidates. What can you tell us about Hafley? I don't think I ever interviewed him when he was here, but he's had a lot of success virtually everywhere he's been.
And they've gotten the big plays that they wanted out of this defense. They already have more takeaways this year than they did all of last season. Again, they haven't done as much of that in the last couple games, and that's something they're going to need to kind of start producing more of. It'll be interesting to see what happens if they're able to produce those tomorrow with a quarterback who hasn't started a game in a few years. But yeah, they're getting the big plays that they want. The run defense still isn't great, but that's been a chronic weakness of the Packers, and it's a little bit better than it has been in the past, though it was not good at all against the Bears.
The Packers are never thought to be a big free agency destination, though they did sign Reggie White once upon a time. But, for the most part, they're an old school team that builds through the draft. But, man, Gutekunst went out in the free agent market this year, and I thought he really went 2 for 2. I mean, he got Josh Jacobs to come over from the Raiders, and then he got Xavier McKinney to come over from the Giants. Usually free agency in the NFL is about the team that gets the new player doesn't benefit that much, and the team that loses the player seems to be hurt by it more. But that's not the case this year. McKinney comes in, and he has absolutely been savage. He's had a bunch of takeaways. I mentioned they've got 19 as a team. He's leading the way. He's got like 7 or 8 by himself. Talk to us about the addition of Xavier McKinney at strong safety and how that's changed this defense.
Yeah, McKinney, I think he had an interception. Maybe it was his first 5 or 6, each of the first 5 or 6 games. He was leading the league in interceptions for quite a while. Kirby Joseph of Detroit overtook him recently, but I think he's still tied with Joseph in total takeaways because he has a fumble recovery as well as all the interceptions he has. He's been huge. I mean, there was talk the first third of the season or so of him being a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, the way he was playing, getting a takeaway just to take away every game. And safety was probably the Packers' biggest weakness, other than maybe kicker last year, and they've really, really upgraded in that area with McKinney coming and also Evan Williams, a rookie 4th-round pick. He's been very productive. Javon Bullard, a 2nd-round pick from Georgia, he's gotten a lot of playing time as well at safety, and they've really turned a weakness into a strength. And Jacobs, got a lot of attention. The Jacobs signing got a lot of attention because it also meant the end of Aaron Jones' time with the Packers. He was enormously popular around here and was a huge factor in their run to the playoffs last year, getting a bunch of 100-yard games in a row. Jacobs is a little more durable. Aaron Jones missed a lot of time last year because of injury, and having Jacobs, he's a little bit more reliable on a week-to-week basis just because of his ability to stay healthy, and he's obviously younger, and he's been very good as well. Gotten a little more active lately in the passing game, and also the Packers, it seems every 5 years or so they get active in the free agent market. Back in 2019, they signed Adrian Amos and the Smith bros, Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, and they were a huge benefit for a few years in that defense. And yet, then cap concerns kept them from being really active in the free agent market for a while. But it looks like those signings of Jacobs and McKinney are really going to pay off this year.
They've got tremendous weapons. To me, one of the things that makes them difficult to prepare for is just the array of weapons they have, right? They've got Jacobs now, who's a really good back. But, Aaron Jones, crushed the Niners as well. So Niner fans are not necessarily all that sad to see Aaron Jones moving on. But, man, Tucker Kraft, what a great player he was in college, and he's, been equally good in the NFL. He's had such a great year this year. DUBS is a West Coast guy. We saw him at Nevada. He's a really underrated player, I think. Watson's got major talent. Reed's a a really underrated slot receiver. Their backups are almost like starters. Wicks could start for a lot of teams. Melton could start for a lot of teams. This team, though, for whatever reason, struggling in the red zone. And the Niners have struggled in the red zone a lot this year as well. Why is Green Bay struggling in the red zone when they have so many different weapons for Jordan Love to throw to?
Good question. I think they'd like to know the answer to that as well. I mean, you wonder, when they were great I'm just thinking out loud. When they were awesome in the red zone in 2020, I remember, you knew that they were going to give the ball to throw the ball to Devontae Adams, but nobody could cover him. And with that, Rodgers to Adams was automatic once they got in the red zone. They really don't have the go-to guy this season in the receiving corps. They got a lot of guys on about equal footing. I guess Jaden Reed has been the most productive of the receivers, and he can hurt you in a lot of ways, whether it's running. They might do an end around with him. He's active in the running game as well. But this is the guy we've got to cover once you get to the red zone, because they have so many different guys that they can throw to. That's tough keeping them all happy necessarily. Romeo Doubs had that game suspension earlier this season when there was reportedly he was questioning his role at the time. He's bounced back quite a bit. But yeah, that would be my guess. Maybe is they just don't know. There's not that one go-to guy, but it is puzzling why their offense is so good outside the 20 and then not nearly as good once they get inside there.
Two last questions. Robert Saleh, obviously he was here. He was popular. Then he was going to, he got fired by the Jets. He was going to sit out the rest of the year. I think that's what the assumption was here. A lot of Niner fans were like, get him to come back. And sure enough, he did come back, but he came back to Green Bay and to LaFleur and not to Shanahan. What's he contributing to Green Bay? Because I know LaFleur was awfully tight-lipped about it this week, but then he also kind of made the point that he feels like Saleh's made a significant contribution already.
The interesting thing is he's a defensive guy, but he's actually working with the offense, not the defense, kind of showing and kind of getting that perspective of a defensive guy and what might work for offensively. And LaFleur was talking this week about specific plays that maybe Saleh contributed to that have helped out. And it's not really a surprise he ended up here because he and LaFleur are very good friends. They were in each other's wedding parties, so it's not really a surprise. This is where he ended up. But yeah, he at least according to LaFleur, Saleh's been a big boost. It was just interesting that he's working with the offense rather than the defense.
Yeah, and it makes sense. As far as self-scouting, and you already have a defensive staff, you don't want to put pressure on them. He's a former head coach, so it would be good for him to do the exercise of kind of being the eyes and ears, another set of eyes and ears for the offense, just another way to self-scout and have an idea of what the other teams are looking at when they're trying to beat you. And it can be really effective, and I'm sure it sounds like LaFleur is impressed. I asked this question to somebody earlier this week who's been covering Green Bay ball for a number of years. And Steve, I know you probably have as well, so I'll throw it to you. You're downtown Green Bay, and you've got Brett Favre on one corner, Aaron Rodgers on another corner, Bart Starr on a corner, and Jordan Love on a corner. And the fans are all hovering around. Who's got the most fans on their corner? Who's the most popular Packer quarterback?
I would guess it's Bart Starr right now because it would be amazing if you actually saw him.
In theory, but let's just say, yeah.
I would argue. Bart. The bigger Q ratings are Rodgers and Favre. But they're also polarizing for a variety of reasons. I would imagine Starr's probably most beloved just because there's nothing bad you can say about him, whereas Rodgers and Favre, for various reasons, not necessarily restricted to football, or maybe a little more polarizing.
Right. Would you say are Green Bay fans more turned off to Favre and what he did with the whole Mississippi thing and the money, or do you think they're more turned off to Rodgers and some of his wild statements and the fact that he wanted out? And who are they? Who do you think are they have a warmer spot for Favre or a warmer spot for A-Rod?
I couldn't speculate, and I think a lot of it probably depends on the particular fan and probably their viewpoints politically, and there's a lot of political stuff there too. With Rogers having supported RFK Jr. and Favre having spoken out. Favre was actually present at a Trump rally in Green Bay for the election. So there are those things. There are those factors to take into consideration as well.
Steve, great stuff. I got to think Green Bay is probably feeling like they're going to get a one-sided victory with Brandon Allen starting. You get the sense that there's a lot of confidence, I would imagine, on the Green Bay side coming into this one, huh?
I don't know. I mean, there's some motivation because of what the 49ers did to knock them out of the playoffs, not just last year, but in some other recent seasons as well. I would have leaned earlier in this week. I would have leaned toward the 49ers winning this game just because I think they're two good teams, and one team's a lot more desperate for a win right now than the other, the 49ers. But yeah, I would imagine without Purdy, without Bosa, it's going to be really difficult for them to win on the road.
Yeah. Steve, great stuff, man. Thanks for jumping on. We really appreciate you giving us the breakdown on the matchup. Thanks again for coming on KNBR.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Steve McGargy, who covers the Packers for the AP, out there in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where tomorrow it's supposed to be right around the high 20s, low 30s. So it won't be freezing, won't be the frozen tundra, but it'll be a whole lot colder than the Niners are used to. And a massive challenge for the Niners, without a doubt. All right, that's going to do it for our hour. Up next, it's JD with Just Dubs. Look at that. I wonder if they called it Just Dubs because of JD. But JD, John Dickinson, the great John Dickinson, talking Just Dubs. How about the Dubs, man? They just keep winning and winning and winning and winning, and they just look so good along the way. So JD will be talking some Warrior basketball. Thanks to Raph. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Kev Lynch. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Make sure you tune in for Niner pregame with JD and Adam Copeland, and I will join them as well in the pregame and the postgame tomorrow. Go Niners. Hopefully the Niners get a win. I can't say that I'm predicting a victory, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. So have a great rest of your Saturday. Thanks for tuning in to 49er Forecast on the Sports Leader.
Dub Nation. Dub Nation.
Big fat dub.
Whenever we can, wherever we can, we're talking hoops. And you know our guys will ramble.
Can you just email me the rest of this story?
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
3-point, Golden State lead. This one to make it a 2-possession game. Missed it, rebound, knocked around, Green hugs it back, and is fouled again, and that is going to do it. With .4 remaining, Green going right back to the line.
All right, and the Warriors win. They hang on. They survive. They find a way to get the job done. 112-108, the final in New Orleans. That's Ryan Ruocco on the call there, along with Richard Jefferson on ESPN last night as the Warriors get the job done again. 112-108, the final. They are 12-3 as we welcome you into Just Dubs here on a Saturday morning on KNBR, the sports leader. It's John Dickinson with you for the next hour as we talk all things Golden State Warriors and NBA. And the Warriors also advancing in Western Conference Group C to the quarterfinals of the Emirates Cup. That's right. It only took them 3 of their 4 group play games to get the job done because they are 3-0 with victories over the Pelicans, Grizzlies, and the Mavs. The Mavs game back on the 12th, the Klay Thompson return game, that proving to be the difference. The Mavs beat the Nuggets last night. The Nuggets had already lost to the Pelicans in group play, and not to get all wonky and bore everybody with that, but the Warriors, at worst, still will be 3-1 in the group play with the win over the Mavs. So they advance to the quarterfinals and will play a game on December 10th or December 11th to be determined as to where it will be specifically. But they are 1 game away from being able to go to Vegas in the Emirates Cup semifinals, the in-season tournament. So, yeah, 1 game as they will be in the group of 8 teams that are going to play with a chance to win and go to Vegas in the semifinals and maybe in the Emirates Cup final. So something new, kind of different. And the Warriors 12-3 to begin the year and playing great basketball overall, but also fighting their way into the Emirates Cup bracket portion of the proceedings, which is going to be going on here again in that second week of December. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. That is the number to give me a call or shoot me a text here. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open. And I guess we'll start with just some thoughts on last night's game and an extension of the bigger picture since this show last aired on Saturday. And the Warriors did take their 3rd loss of the year, their second to the Clippers in 2 meetings, but able to bounce back, handle business against the Hawks on Wednesday. Then last night in New Orleans, a Pelicans team that got a couple of their guys back last night in Trey Murphy III and Brandon Ingram, but they still just woefully injured. I mean, no Zion Williamson for the Pelicans, no C.J. McCollum, no DeJounte Murray. I mean, they have just been banged up, and they had been playing without Ingram and Murphy on top of all of those guys that I just mentioned. And the Pelicans were a team trying to save their season from just evaporating before we even hit Thanksgiving, and they may, unfortunately for them, be unable to do it. But the Warriors, I think as impressive as Golden State has been in the wins that they've had against some of the really good teams or projected really good teams, Boston and Oklahoma City, flat out. I know Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis didn't play in Boston back in November when the Warriors got that win on the 6th at TD Garden, but they went in there and won that game late against a defending champion team. They went and won at Oklahoma City in a game where they had a massive lead and then had to, down the stretch of that game, hold on for dear life and make enough plays to keep OKC at arm's length, and they were able to do it. The Mavs game with the 15-5 run at the end of that one when it looked like Klay Thompson was going to get the last laugh in his return to Chase Center. This Warriors team they have impressive wins against really good teams, but I think equally as impressive in a different way is the fact that they've handled business on nights where they haven't exactly had their best fastball. And I think last night is a perfect example of that. There was a game in Washington that was the lead-up, could easily be a trap game or a game that you overlook, coming off of, at the beginning of that trip in early November, an overtime game against the Rockets where they blew a big lead and then hung on and won. I think you get credit for that. The Rockets are a damn good team. Throw the Rockets in there in terms of the impressive wins, even though the Warriors lately have been dominant against the Rockets, still having not lost to the Rockets since before COVID. And this, of course, is a new-look Rockets team that's much improved. And you look at the standings in the Western Conference, and they're right there, number 3 at 12-5 on the season, with the Warriors still pacing things in the West at 12-3. OKC's right there at 12-4. But you look at the Warriors atop the mountain right now, 15 games in, playing at an 800 clip. And they've got wins against OKC and Houston, who are the next top 2 teams in the conference. And they've got a win against the number 2 team in the Eastern Conference. Now, yeah, there was a kerthud against the Cavs as Cleveland was wrecking shop all the way up until Tuesday when the Celtics were able to hand them their first loss of the season. But I think equally impressive for the Warriors to me is the fact that they're not losing games that I think they would have lost in the last couple of years. I think last night is a game that they might have lost last year or 2 years ago. I think some of those games where they lost the bigger leads against Houston and Oklahoma City, I think those are games that they would have lost in other years. And we'd be having a completely different conversation about this team. And I know last night on DUBS OT, there was a lot of frustration in the YouTube chat as we had the discussion about the fact that the game was ugly and the Pelicans are banged up and the Warriors should be blowing these teams out. And the truth is they also have blowout wins against inferior opponents in addition to the games that they've had to hang on, and in addition to those games where they've played a lot of really good teams. So I just think when you look at it, they have every kind of win imaginable at this point. A couple of blowout wins at Portland and Utah right out of the chute. The Clippers have been their kryptonite. Length, balance of youth and veteran leadership. Ty Lue's a great head coach with a hell of a defense. The Warriors that really makes life difficult on them. We can get into what the Clippers' losses mean if you want at 808 KNBR. Do they really mean anything? Is it an outlier? Is it just a bad matchup? I think you could make a case that the Clippers, without Kawhi Leonard, are kind of a poor man's Warriors. They've got the one star who they're going to be dependent on, and then a lot of depth. And I don't think maybe necessarily as quality a depth and not necessarily as quality a star. Although James Harden is a terrific player, but at this point I think, and he's getting the job done running that team and doing it in the way that he has to do it to be successful and for the Clippers to be successful. So impressive in his own right, but I do feel like the Clippers are kind of a poor man's Warriors, but for whatever reason, they've got they've got some guys that are Warrior kryptonite on that roster, and Ty Lue at times has been. So, a couple of outlier games against the Clippers. We'll see if those matter as those teams can continue to face off against each other. But blowout wins at Portland and Utah. You've got the wins without Steph Curry against the Pelicans, and especially the first one where they came from 18 down to win by 18 in October. I thought that was the first just, whoa, like there's something different going on here. They do it with depth. They do it with Buddy. I mean, Buddy Hield led the Warriors in scoring in 5 of their first 6 games. Buddy Hield. And then Steph Curry has joined the party in the biggest games of the season. Boston, OKC, Dallas. All the headliner games, it's been Steph Curry. This week, it's been Andrew Wiggins. And that's another thing I want to get into here between now and noon. Andrew Wiggins is bringing it at a level that is pretty close to 3 years ago. Maybe not quite all the way back to that level, but here's the one thing. I don't even care if it's 3 years ago, and I've said this a lot. If he is just not what it's been the last couple of years, there is an in-between from what it has been the last couple of years and a tick under what he was in the championship season of 2021-22, that if he can hit, this team can be highly successful, because I think top to bottom, this is the deepest roster that the Warriors have deployed of these last 3 seasons. So impressive wins against the Pelicans. They go without Steph Curry and build a 30-point lead at Houston, have to hang on and win that one. And then I think there's been a handful of games like Washington, like Memphis last week, like even Atlanta, where a big lead got down to, 13? 31 down to 13, I think it was. At one point, a 30-12 Hawks run after the Warriors had really built it up. But the starters have to come back in and take care of business, and Steve Kerr called some timeouts to keep the Hawks at arm's length, and you win that one too. And then last night, I think, was kind of akin to the game against Washington back on November 4th. So they're doing it against a lot of different talent levels, a lot of different ways. And if you look at this team's point differential, I mean, they're right up there among the league leaders. It's not like they're eking out games. And look, I get there's some concerns over the blown leads and the almost blown leads, as my buddy Greg Silver has mentioned on some of the DUBS OT shows here prior to even last night. And so there are games that the almost losses don't count. Although, man, last night really felt like a bunch of games, Sacramento, Utah 2 years ago. I mean, a bunch of the games that the Warriors have just kicked away. And to me, it's not so much you have a 30-point lead and it gets whittled down to 6, or it ends up being you're behind and have to come back and win the game. Like, those are not the games that bother me as much. 31-point lead gets down to 13, you put the game away and win by 18. Like, those are the ones that don't, like, I'm not concerned about those. The ones that are concerning to me are the ones like last night and a couple of others where the Warriors are basically up 6 with a minute left, up 5 with 40 seconds left, and it's careless turnover, somebody hits a 3, can't get the ball in bounds, call timeout, still can't get the ball in bounds, turnover, team down 2 has a shot to tie the game or win it with a 3-pointer right there in the final seconds. Get to the free throw line, miss 2 free throws, team gets another opportunity, stop them again, foul them again, miss free throws again, have to get an offensive rebound. I mean, it was all there in the final call. Like, those are the bleep shows that this Warriors team, I think, has to avoid, because if you do tend to have a propensity for that to happen, then some of the better teams are going to be able to beat you in down the stretch in some of those games if you are just not sure of yourself in those situations. And often it's been Steph Curry and Draymond Green, which makes it all the more perplexing. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. We are coming to you today from beautiful Appleton, Wisconsin, as we did last night for DUBS OT, and will tonight, by the way, for DUBS OT. Warriors and the Spurs tonight. And we're going to be with you right about 8 o'clock, 7:45, 8 o'clock, Warriors and Spurs. That's a 5:30 game, and we'll have DUBS OT for you after the ball game around 7:45, 8 o'clock from beautiful Appleton, Wisconsin, as I gear up for the 49ers and the Packers tomorrow and everything that entails. And, of course, you can hear the 49ers and the Packers on KNBR with the pregame starting at 9 a.m. So look forward to that, and I'll be on hand over at Lambeau Field. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. So 808 KNBR, if you want to weigh in on this team, How concerned are you by the almost blown leads? I think we can get into that. How concerned are you, if at all, with the fact that some of these games against some teams that are struggling have been a little closer than maybe you would want them to be? Although, again, I think the Warriors have the receipts. They've done it in every different way you could imagine, and they've done it with different players being the number 2. And I want to talk more about Andrew Wiggins coming back here, because Andrew Wiggins' ability to be closer to what he was 3 years ago, that has the potential to be a major game changer as to where the Warriors can level this thing up and where they can ultimately get to. Because, look, we're already to the point where I think we know this is going to be a pretty damn good regular season team. Like, I'm about ready to clinch that. Like, hey, this team's going to push 50 wins in the regular season. But then the debate becomes, are they just a good regular season team, or can they be a team that can make a little noise, and maybe more than a little noise, in the playoffs, given the current state of the Western Conference? So we'll get into Andrew Wiggins, because I think he is the key to all of that. It is Just Dubs, 808 KNBR. We'll get into the YouTube chat as well, right here on the Sports Leader.
KNBR and KNBR FM, your home of San Francisco 49ers football. This is KNBR, and this is Just Dubs with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
New Orleans had been 4 for their last 21 from 3 as Wiggins spins it in off the window plus the foul.
Live from downtown.
Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
All right, welcome back. Yeah, Andrew Wiggins, 2 and then 3 of his big game last night as he ends up with 30 for the first time this season. 30 points, 9 of 14, 3 of 5 from 3, made all of his free throws. Free throws, less of an issue last night until the very end when Draymond Green couldn't knock one down and then had to get his own rebound to preserve the 112-108 victory. It is Just Dubs with JD, John Dickinson, here on a Saturday morning on KNBR, the Sports Leader, with you until noon here. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627 to jump in and join the conversation as the Warriors continue to impress. Now 12-3 on the year, 15 games in. They are leading the Western Conference. They are deep. And I think among the many things that we opened the show with and reassessing everything from the last week, but really these first 15 games overall, which is kind of what this show is all about, is the different ways against different opponents that the Warriors have been able to get the job done and win. And it hasn't always been pretty. Last night, I think a prime example of it not being pretty, but you're doing enough. You get down early. The Pelicans got a little bit of life from getting some of their guys back in Ingram and Murphy, but it was the early three-point shooting, and it was Andrew Wiggins' first quarter where he goes for 13 points and 3 for 3 from 3 that helps stem the tide and have the Warriors in a position where they were up 34-30 at the end of the quarter. Andrew Wiggins is playing great basketball. And you look at these last 2 games for Andrew Wiggins, and 30 against the Pelicans. You look at Andrew Wiggins' 27 against the Hawks on Wednesday at Chase Center. And when he's playing like that, 22 against the Clippers in defeat, but an efficient 22. When Andrew Wiggins is playing like that, I think this Warriors team moves up a level from top 6 in the Western Conference to having the ability to maybe be a contender in the Western Conference, because then it really does give Steve Kerr a foundation of 3 players that he knows he can count on a night-in, night-out basis, and knows that are going to be not only in the starting lineup, but in the finishing lineup. And you can go on and on about depth, and this team clearly has the depth, and it's a huge story as to why the Warriors have been playing as well as they have. Their bench is leading the NBA in all kinds of different categories. Impressive stuff. But where your bench really helps you is when your foundation is set among the players that are going to help you get the job done as far as starters and close. You can pick one player out of your that's going to fill the 4th or the 5th spot in your closing lineup, but you don't want to have to pick 3. And so I look at it in a lot of these games here lately when the Warriors are up big and maybe a lead starts to dwindle, and Steve Kerr's got to figure out when to go back to Steph, right? That was always the question. When to go back to Steph, when to go back to Draymond, when to go back to Steph and Draymond. In a lot of these games, as teams have made their runs against the Warriors, it's Wiggins and Steph and Draymond. It's the 3 of them. And they really, when Wiggins is playing like this, balance each other so well because you've got Steph, who's the future Hall of Famer and the MVP and the all-time great. He's the straw that stirs the drink for everything that the Warriors do. And then you've got Draymond, who's connected to Steph offensively and the ball movement and the way the Warriors like to function. And then he's the anchor of the defense, flying around like a man possessed, coaching everybody else up on the floor, making sure that this team's getting stops when they need to get stops. But then you've got Wiggins, who really, and it's the two-way Wiggs thing. When he has the ability to score like a number 2, last night even a number 1, the last 2 nights even a number 1 with the 27 against the Hawks. And so much of it, I think, is the three-point shot. Like when Wiggins is making his threes, it just levels everything up. I mean, this team's almost unbeatable, it feels like to me, when Wiggins is making three. When it's 3 for 5, 3 for 6, 2 for 4. You know, it seems like those are the games when he's shooting it about 15 to 17, 15, 16 times, and he's making between 7 and 9, 12 of 17 against the Hawks, inside, outside. He just has the ability to hit from the perimeter, get all the way to the bucket. He's been rebounding aggressively, and he can defend. Like, when Andrew Wiggins is on, he is and can compete with and contend with the other big-time wings at the position in the NBA. And it allows the Warriors to not be at a position of disadvantage. And when you have that foundation of Steph, who does what he does, and Draymond, who does what he does, and Wiggins, who does what he does, then you can figure out, is it Draymond? And it has been, and I think will continue to be in the starting lineup. Is it Kuminga at the 4 with Draymond at the 5? Is it Kyle Anderson out there maybe a little bit with Draymond? You can pick and choose who your 2 is. When you have the other 3 or 4 set, you can get away with starting Lindy Waters, the 3rd, at the 2, and playing him the first 5-6 minutes of each half. And then what do you really do? You figure out who's playing well among Podziemski or Moody or Buddy Hield, and those guys become the closers. And that's exactly what you've seen. You've seen Steve Kerr still give Lindy Waters, who's a solid defender, will make the right pass and take the right shot, doesn't always hit it. And I thought it was funny, Steve Kerr on Waters a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, was saying that part of what he really likes about Lindy Waters is the shots that he doesn't take. That in that starting group, he has the ability to knock down the open ones, but also keep the ball moving, which might lead to Wiggins or Steph getting a better look, or it might lead to a easy one for Draymond setting up TJD if you get deeper and deeper into the flow of the offense. But when Wiggins is at the level that he's at, it just makes everything else easier for Steve Kerr. You can pick and choose at that 2 spot, and that's exactly what Kerr did last night. He starts Lindy Waters, and Lindy Waters didn't have a great game, but he plays the first 5-6 minutes of each half, and that's it. Maybe gets a second cameo into the second quarter. And you go to everybody else. You go to Buddy Hield, who struggled last night. You go to Podziemski, who had a nice bounce-back game, I thought, last night. Didn't hit threes, but he hit his 2s, and he got rebounds, and he kept the ball moving. Moses Moody can work his way into the mix. And it was basically Podziemski and Moody and Podziemski down the stretch for the Warriors with Wiggins and with Draymond Green and with Stephen Curry. And I just remember, and look, I'm not looking to take a victory lap on this necessarily, but I go back to the summer and all the frustration about the Warriors' inability to get Paul George and the inability to get Lauri Markkanen. And the frustration, I think, just with Wiggins in general because of his lack of availability and just the general malaise that he played with when he was on the court. And he's still got a little of that because I think it's just too ingrained in him. Some of it, I think, is personality. But I think he is just one of those guys that always kind of looks like he's coasting even when he's not. And when he is coasting, he really looks like he's coasting, and it has the potential to at times look like he doesn't care, which I don't think is necessarily the case. But when his motor is revved up and he's locked in, it just brings a whole other element offensively and defensively at a position where the Warriors have been their most vulnerable when he's either been unavailable or he hasn't been locked in and playing at that level. He gives them a chance to be able to say they can be contenders. He eases the load in terms of Steve Kerr able to pick and choose with some of the lineups and combinations he wants to go to. Andrew Wiggins, huge deal. And, yeah, people wanted him traded for a bucket of balls, man. People wanted him traded for Zach LaVine. People treated Andrew Wiggins, and I was not among them, although I understood the frustration. But people treated Wiggins like just get him the hell out of town. Trade him for anything and start Moses Moody. Trade him for anything and start Kuminga. Trade him for LaVine. Trade him for Ingram. Here's one for you. When Andrew Wiggins is playing close to the top of his level, I'd rather have him than Ingram. Because he defends and he rebounds. And I think he's an unselfish enough player to fit the rest of the Warriors system, where it's not like you have to just run a bunch of ISO high pick and roll for him like you kind of have to do with Ingram to allow Ingram to operate. And Ingram's been a guy who's been questioned and scrutinized for being low motor. But when Wiggins is playing close to the level, I would say the level that he's played at overall this season, the last 3 games, it's been even better than that. Last 3 games have been playoff Wiggins, 2022 Wiggins. And I don't know that he can replicate that, but if he can get to a point where he is now, I think it just allows this Warriors team to continue on this run here that's already had them off to a 12-3 start at the beginning of the year, and you're wondering how far they can take this thing. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. It is John Dickinson here, just Dubs with JD on the Sports Leader, as the Warriors set to go at it against the Spurs. And we'll have Dubs OT for you after the Warriors take on the Spurs tonight. So look forward to that. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line open. 209. At least the Warriors aren't playing like the Niners this season. Yeah, they are. Isn't it funny how sometimes it works out that way? Right? Warriors kind of mid the last couple of years. Niners contending for the Super Bowl. Now the Niners are kind of mid, and we'll see about the Warriors' ability to contend and contend on what level. But I thought it was interesting, and we can get into this coming up next. We played the final call from Ryan Ruocco on ESPN with Richard Jefferson, and he mentioned during that telecast the fact that Steve Kerr is starting to acknowledge some of the similarities between the 21-22 championship team and this team in the early part of the year. So let's get into that. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Warriors continue to get the job done in many different ways, and we are going to continue to discuss it with you right here on the Sports Leader.
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Not great, but a game like this, you take the win and you run. You just get out of the arena and get to the airport and enjoy the win and watch the tape later and figure out what you can do better. But so this was going to be a tough game. Obviously them getting Ingram and Murphy back, and a desperate team. I thought they played really hard tonight, right from the beginning, set a tone, and fortunately we responded.
Yeah, the Warriors did respond. That Steve Kerr postgame last night from New Orleans. They win 112-108. It's Just Dubs with JD. Final segment here on a Saturday morning back in Northern California. 808 KNBR if you want to jump in and join the conversation. 415-808-5627 to give me a call or shoot me a text here in the final 10, 15 minutes of this one. Steve Kerr maybe being a little bit harsh as far as how they played last night. Not their best game, but they did win. I believe they won 3 out of 4 quarters. Yeah, they won 3 out of the 4 quarters last night. They got down quick. Coach Kerr mentioned the juice that the Pelicans got from Ingram and Murphy being back, but they were up 4 into the quarter, down 1 at the half, but quickly got it back. I mean, it wasn't the prettiest game, but it felt like the Warriors were in control of the game. I thought for most of it, once they were leading there, aside from the run at the top of the second quarter where the game kind of flipped and the Warriors went, I think, from up 5 to down 5 or from up 8 to down 5. I guess it was a 13-0 run. Really, other than that run and some of the end of game can't hang on to the ball, keep turning it over, Pelicans are going to get extra chances. That ugliness, I thought the Warriors maybe didn't play necessarily as badly as Steve Kerr had mentioned there, but as far as the end result, yeah, you take the win and you get the heck out, you go to San Antonio, and we'll see what the Warriors do as far as availabilities in terms of tonight, and I should actually probably check that right now. And I'm going to go ahead and log into my NBA injury report here because typically teams, and I don't see the one for this hour quite yet. Oh, there it is. Teams typically have to, in the 1 o'clock hour, wherever they play, on the second of a back-to-back. That is the deadline to release the injury report. So we'll see if the Warriors have it out, and maybe it's been tweeted out as well. But, yeah, Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Gary Payton II, Lindy Waters III, all probable for the Warriors. So nobody at this point resting for the Warriors on the second of a back-to-back. With the game in San Antonio. Curry with the left knee bursitis, which has popped up on the last few injury reports. Draymond with the right elbow soreness. And then GP2, left knee inflammation. Lindy Waters, illness. So maybe a little bit under the weather for Lindy Waters. But all probable. So anytime guys are probable as 6 hours before tip-off, that's usually good to go. I wanted to touch on in this segment, and we'll get to the YouTube chat to close out the show because I see everybody, a lot of regulars and a lot of newbies. I like a lot of newbies maybe checking out this show that are listening to Larry and then get an opportunity to stick with us here on KNBR and talk a little bit of Dubs. So, yeah, we got some newbies in the chat as well, but always enjoy the regulars and their welcome to keep it interactive. We love interacting in the chat on Dubs OT and Just Dubs. I did want to, before we get to that, though, bring up something that Ryan Ruocco mentioned on the broadcast, which is the fact that in their conversations with Steve Kerr in the lead-up to the game against the Pelicans, he acknowledged, and he started to do this a little more in press conferences, the similarities between the 2021-22 team and this team. And, of course, that team won the NBA championship and got off to this unbelievable, surprising start. And I'm looking at the Warriors started that year 4-0, And then they were 11-1. They were 4-0, lost to the Grizzlies in overtime, and then reeled off 7 straight wins through the end of October and the middle of November to get to 11-1 before they had their second loss of the season in Charlotte. And then they won 7 more in a row to get to 18-2. So this hasn't quite been that as of yet, but 15 games in, the Warriors were 13-2. They were 13-2. 15 games in. And so they're 1 game off of that pace. Now, is this going to turn into 17-3 or 18-3? Warriors took their third loss on November 30 in that year in Phoenix. But, yeah, I mean, you look at it, and the defense, I think, is similar. The give-a-bleep level, which is something that I always talk about, this Warriors team, after the way things have gone these last 2 years, led by Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr, they wanted to prove that this year was going to be different than the last 2 years, that they were going to be more engaged, more highly competitive, more connected. The pieces fit together. Remember, that was something? We're like, wow, Otto Porter Jr. and Nemanja Bjelica, and who's this Gary Payton II guy who was on the team during COVID and now all of a sudden is this amazing defender? And you've got these rookies who can kind of play. Not a lot, but can kind of play. And wow, Kevon Looney's found it. Jordan Poole. Wow, Jordan Poole, who's going to be the clear-cut number 2 scorer with Steph Curry out? That was or with Klay Thompson out and still rehabbing his injury until January. Oh, Jordan Poole is going to average 18.5 points per game. And again, it's not exact, but that team built very early on a defensive identity. Jordan Poole emerged as the number 2 scorer along with Wiggins. Again, I think those two were more clear-cut. I think we've seen Buddy Hield in a lot of these games be that number 2 scorer, even coming off the bench. It's been more by committee. Kuminga's gotten in there some. But now Wiggins is starting to emerge as Wiggins emerged at this point 3 years ago. The identity of that team was defense. The identity of this team, first and foremost, I think, is defense and ball movement and depth. And nobody, and I mean nobody that year thought, hey, this team has the ability to contend. And that was 100% the vibe coming into this season for the Warriors, that nobody believed they could contend. And then all of a sudden they were 3 years ago 4-0 and 11-1 and 18-2. And you look at this year and where this Warriors team is, and it's similar. I mean, it really is in a lot of different ways. And you look at this team to begin the year, and it's 7-1, 10-2, 12-3. And we'll see what happens tonight, second of the back-to-back against Houston. But and some fun games ahead with Oklahoma City, and they go to Phoenix, at Denver. They're playing Houston again, playing Minnesota 3 times, basically in a 2-week period. And they're going to have the Emirates Cup game now, the Emirates Cup quarterfinal game, which, by the way, will be played either December 10th or December 11th. December 10th or December 11th. Those games are played in the home buildings of the qualifying teams, so that could be a game at Chase. I think it likely will be a game at Chase if the Warriors are to beat Denver next week, but it depends on overall records and point differential, the way they seed that out as to who hosts the games on the 10th and the 11th, and they're 1 game away at that point. Finals are on the 5th. The championship game, if you win that, is on Tuesday, December the 17th. All right, final couple of minutes here. I do want to give some shout-outs and some nods here. Rockin' New Era 84, appreciate you. Bees Knees, we were talking about most impressive Warriors wins. Bees Knees says the most impressive win for me is at Houston without Curry. Yeah, especially when you look at how good the Rockets have been before that game and since that game. So to build that 30-point lead at Houston, have the Rockets come all the way back, and I think the Warriors have a little bit of ownage on some of the Rockets' young players because the Warriors have dominated them since pre-COVID. But that's a completely different team, a real good defensive team, a tough-minded team, a talented team in the Rockets. And the Warriors to do that without Steph was impressive as heck. And then to hold on and get the win. No cap 757. I believe Steph and Draymond will be out of gas tonight. Maybe won't play. It's going to be hard to win tonight after last night. That is a fact in terms of, and it looks like both are going to play. But when you do have to expend a lot of energy to beat a lesser opponent, and the Pelicans at this point are a lesser opponent, there can be a residual against a better opponent, and the Spurs at this point, 8-8, are a better opponent. And the second of the back-to-back is always something that can level the playing field. JD, this team is mentally tough. Yeah, appreciate it. Erwin Kwong, one of the few times last night that the Warriors bench got outplayed. Yeah, they were outscored by a point, and a lot of different, a lot of kind of random guys stepping in for the Pelicans. But I think the Warriors bench is going to win 7-8 times out of 10 on a night-in, night-out basis. Enter the Draymond. Too bad about Melton. Yeah, rough news this week with DeAnthony Melton having the ACL. So he is going to be out for the season. And we'll see. As far as one thing I jotted down to get to, and maybe we'll get to it with DUBS OT tonight, but DeAnthony Melton is somebody that was really beloved in the Warriors locker room. He also is on a 1-year, $12.8 million contract, which means he could be paired with somebody else, and maybe you could bring back a $20 to $23 million player. Warriors are applying for a disabled player exception. They could be granted that for up to half of Melton's salary, so that would be, $6.4 million. But the Warriors are hard capped at the first apron and only about $500,000 under right now, so you'd have to make a trade to free up enough money under the hard cap to be able to use the disabled player exception to sign players. So, yeah, a lot that would go into that. Appreciate Estimated Eyes. We sup in the chat. As well, a lot of our regulars. Connect Time. Thank you for jumping in and joining the conversation here on Just Dubs on this Saturday. HB will get the final thought here, and I think this is a good one on Wiggins. Wiggins is fluid, not slow. He just doesn't feel like going into work at times. I mean, that's been the knock. That's been the question. I think he's in better shape. Steve Kerr's mentioned that a couple of different times, and I think with all the stops and starts and ins and outs of Wiggins in terms of playing time and availability and all that, I think Wiggins got himself to a point where he wasn't maybe in the best shape, and now he's in a lot better shape, and I think that bodes well for the remainder of his season. All right, big thanks to Raf Corral. Excellent job, Raf. We will talk to you next week, and to join us tonight for DUBS OT, as we'll be on right about 7:45, 8 o'clock. Greg Silver on hand for that one as well tonight. So we'll be taking your calls and your texts and communicating and interacting with the folks on YouTube and Twitch as well. So thanks to everybody. We'll talk to you tonight right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.